today's session. My name is Lavenda Ochieng. I work at ARIN as a research assistant, and I'll be your moderator for today. So just to start us off, we know that at ARIN we have this fellowship program where we discuss, we peer learn, and also we share good transformative research to impact practices across Africa. So we also seek to identify and leverage on key research talents to flexibly and innovatively contribute to Africa research. So that's why we do host these reviews to come up with various innovative approaches that can be used in different sectors, from climate change to technology to sustainability and sort of. So at today's topic, we will discuss about the knowledge, attitude and perception of climate change in Africa. However much we work on adaptation and mitigative strategies, we need to understand how people, especially the local and those at the grassroots, how do they understand climate change and what should be done in order to make these approaches that we taking in order to adapt and mitigate effective. You can't adapt to something when you don't know what it entails or what it means. So we need to understand this knowledge. We need to understand the attitude and the perception of these people. Yeah, this is crucial for effective mitigation and adaptation strategies. It also helps to identify specific challenges that tailoring communication and implementation of policies that will align with these communities' needs and beliefs. Additionally, it will involve the local communities fostering a sense of ownership and collaboration, which is essential for addressing these impacts at the grassroots level. So our speaker will be Mr. Jim Oduor. Mr. Jim Oduor is a professional who has a lot of experience in climate change. You also have design research methods and data collection tools which he conducts and selecting the training teams of field researchers and numerators, overseeing teams as they administer surveys and sort of. He also is also a PhD student. Let me just get that right. Mr. Jim is also a PhD student of climate change and adaptation at the University of Nairobi. He also holds a master's degree in international studies and a bachelor's degree in education, that is linguistics and literature. So Mr. Jim, I will really welcome you to take us through the presentation. In case you'll have a question or a comment, feel free to put in the comment section or you raise your hand at the end of the presentation. Thank you so much and welcome. I hope this will be a very insightful presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Lavenda. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes, you're audible.
All right. So thank you very much, Lavenda, for the introduction. So I think you basically said everything about Jim Oduor. Just to recap, my name is Jim Oduor. I'm a social researcher. I do social research and monitoring and evaluation. I am also a climate change and adaptation PhD student at the University of Nairobi. And my specialization and thesis is on urban green infrastructure. I also sit in the board of Climate Care Africa, which is a national NGO that works on climate adaptation and mitigation in Kenya. Climate Care Africa works in 5 counties, and we've done several projects. The main one is on climate education and capacity building. Now, before we started the project, we decided to do a knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions study, just to find out, as we talk about educating the public, as we talk about talking to the public and carrying out educational activities, what are the knowledge levels at this particular time? What do people know about climate change? What are their perceptions? And what are their attitudes? What do they perceive climate change be? So we carried out a study in Nairobi, and this study was carried out in 2022. This report has already been presented here, but then now we said, after carrying out this study in Nairobi, what next? And it brought us to a critical question that we wanted to understand. And our question today, and what brings us here today to discuss, is how can collaborative efforts between research institutions, academia, policymakers, and the local community amplify the effectiveness of education and awareness campaigns that will shape knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions regarding climate change in Africa. So we are looking at it Africa-wide, but then this study was done in Nairobi. It's just to give us an overview of what people think in Nairobi. Now, this was done in 2022, immediately after COP27. So at least I'm just letting you know about that. I think if we are to do another study today, then maybe the results would be a bit different or more or less the same, but we wait and see if another study is to be done. So over to my presentation. Sorry, Lavender, how long do I have for this presentation?
Hello, Jim. You have 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay. So if you have any questions, I think you can either note them down on the chat box, or after the presentation, then we can answer the questions. So I'm going to take you through the presentation, the agenda. We have introduction, the methodology on how we did the study, the key findings and conclusions and policy recommendations that we had after the study. So first of all, to begin, what is a knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions survey? Now, a knowledge, attitudes, and we usually, I'll refer to it as CAP. A CAP survey is a quantitative method that provides access to quantitative and qualitative information. So what CAP surveys are used to do is just to reveal, is one, to know what are the knowledge levels, and also to reveal misconceptions or misunderstandings that may present obstacles to activities that we'd implement. For example, for us, like we'd want to implement a climate change awareness campaign, then we do this study so that we can get what are the misconceptions that people know, or what are the misunderstandings. Then now this will help us shape our campaign to just know this is what people know, and this is maybe what we should focus on to tell them that the truth is this. So CAP surveys, essentially, they record an opinion, and this is based on the declarative. So in other words, for the results that we have here, we bring out what was said, what was said by the participants in the field when we carried out the study. Now, why did we decide to carry out this CAP survey, or why a CAP survey is carried out? So the first is to provide critical baseline material. So for example, if we want to have a project the way we want, then this survey will help us to get the baseline material that would help us to evaluate as we continue with the project. The second reason was to shape activities in the awareness campaign that we are intending to have. And three is to form the bedrock to inform policy recommendations in Africa. And lastly is to develop communication strategies. So about our survey, this study focused, thematically, it focused on climate change knowledge, attitudes, and practices. We also looked at their level of concern about climate change, and as well as media use. We went to ask questions about media because it was going to be important as we carry out the survey. Then we know what are the media channels that they use, which would be the best channels to use for the different age groups. What are the times that, if you want to have a campaign, what are the best times? Yeah, and also find the most effective ways to reach the city residents with messages of climate change. The target population was a diverse population, and I would just say it included everybody: men, women, people living with disabilities, the elderly, and the youth. When you carry out a CAP survey, you carry it out in the natural environment or the natural habitat. So we carried out this survey. There are people that we talked to at their homes. There are people that we talked to at their workplaces, at different places. It's just to get them in their natural settings so that you try and get what they really perceive at that particular time. So the survey was conducted from the 28th of November 2022 to the 9th of December 2022. So methodology, how did we carry out this survey? So this study adopted a descriptive research design. And this is a method that we use to gather data through measurement of some items. So specifically, we did a household survey. We had a questionnaire that included both closed and open questions. We also carried out observation where the research team keenly observed data and information provided pertaining and also looked at behaviors of the respondents. So the fieldwork was conducted between, sorry, I think there is an error here because it should have been from 18th of December, of November, but I will confirm. But it was carried out in all the 17 sub-counties of Nairobi, and we carried out random sampling of the respondents. The survey observed quota control, including age and gender, to reflect a uniform setting. And in this sampling, the level of accuracy or margin of error was plus or minus 3% of representative of the population. So the sample of people or the respondents that we talked to in this survey was 384. The sampling design. One, we adopted a stratified random sampling design, which at the first stage determined the total sample size for the whole study. So we looked at the whole population of Nairobi. The second step was to get proportions to identify samples for each sub-county, because now we divided it into sub-county. We divided Nairobi into sub-counties. So the same approach that we use to divide the sub-counties is the same one that now we use to go down into the wards and to the lowest level. So the sample size determination, the target population for the study were individuals residing in Nairobi. So that was the first thing that we were looking at. Are you residing in Nairobi? Because we wanted to get responses from Nairobi residents. Two, the study adopted stratified random sampling, where the first stage determined the total sample for the whole population, and we went down the same route. So purposive sampling was used to sample the individuals residing in the different parts of Nairobi. So I will then go to, I suppose we know what purposive sampling is where the researcher randomly selects specific subjects to participate in the study. So what were the findings? So first of all, I'll start with the demographics. So 59% of the respondents that were interviewed were male, while 41 were female. So in terms of age, 50.71 were aged between 21 and 30 years. 27.73% were aged between 21 to 40 years, while 12.09% were aged between 41 to 50 years. 5.92% were aged below 20 years. And I suppose that is between 18 and 20. 2.61% were aged between 51 to 60 years, and 0.95% were above 61 years. In terms of education, 1.4% had no education. That's what they indicated. 10.54% had primary education. 35.05% had secondary education. 11.76% had technical education. 32.35% had undergraduate degrees, while 8.83% had either a master's or a PhD. So I think if we look at the education level, I think the education level in Nairobi is, I would say, relatively good as per what we got for this particular study. So that, again, helps us in making decisions on communication, making decisions on which models to use, language, and things like that. Now, causes of climate change. We sought to find out, do you know the causes of climate change? So 16% indicated that they do not know the causes of climate change. 62% indicated that they somewhat knew the causes of climate change, while 22% were positive that they knew the causes of climate change. So again, if you look at 62 and 22, I think it means a fairly good percentage know about the causes of climate change, which again is good and helps in shaping the awareness campaigns. 90% at that particular time had heard of the term climate change, which is good. Remember, this study was done immediately after COP27. So a week before that, there was a lot in the news about climate change. So maybe that contributed, maybe not. Now, 20% of the respondents were very well informed on climate change issues. That is what causes it, its effects, adaptation, and mitigation measures. 75% of the households heard about climate change through TV, followed by 61% who heard about climate change through radio, and 58% had heard about climate change through the internet. So from what we got, most of the households were found to be aware and could associate factors such as changing weather, droughts, increase in surface temperatures, floods, increase in insects to climate change. Now, 6 out of 10 of Nairobi residents perceive climate change to be serious. So most respondents rated the seriousness of climate change between 5 and 8. So we did the scale of between 1 to 10. How do you perceive climate change to be serious? So 6 out of 10 had rated it between 5 to 8. 19% further believe, 17% of the respondents interviewed, however, disagreed that we were too small to do anything about climate change. And also that African countries are not responsible for climate change. Yeah, that's 17%. So I think that's a concern. If we have 17% of the population believing that there's nothing that we can do and we are too small, and in any case, we have not contributed to it. So I think that again helps us shape our awareness campaign, target this 17%. Now, 19% further believe that persons engaging in climate change are making a big deal out of nothing. Yeah, they feel that it's, this is just normal. This is how everything should be, and you guys are just too scared. Yeah, the what we call the climate deniers, as 19%. And from our conclusion, most respondents are for the opinion that African countries should work collaboratively together in dealing with climate change issues, which I think is a good move. Now, we asked the respondents if they were aware of organizations that are dealing with climate change, and 15% of the respondents were aware of organizations that are dealing with climate change. Rather small, but food for thought. Now, 23% of the respondents believe that the government is already doing all it can to avert the effects of climate change. And nothing more can be done. Yeah. And on the same breath, 53% propose that the government should provide more information on climate change and increase public awareness. Now, 16.5% of the respondents are not aware of the possible effect of climate change, while 63% are somewhat aware of the possible effects of climate change. I think I had talked about this in a previous slide. Yeah, so only 20% of the respondents reported to be aware of the possible effects of climate change. Now, 15% in terms of organizations dealing with climate change. So 15% of the respondents were aware of the organizations dealing with climate change. 61% are somewhat aware of organizations actively dealing with climate change. 22%, I think I've already talked about this. Let me move to the next slide. So on information sources and media preferences, 60% of the respondents affirmatively agreed that they're willing to receive information on climate change. 69% of the respondents preferred text messages, 70% preferred television, 79% preferred email, and 50% preferred getting information from the internet, while 35% preferred newspapers. We had all those different media outlets, and we would ask them which one they preferred. Now, we also thought, what are the times that you watch TV or listen to the radio, so that we could know which models would you use, and if you're using them, then which are the best times to reach the most number of people. So 69% of the respondents reported to watch TV between 7 p.m. 10 p.m. Most respondents interviewed listened to the radio between 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. during weekdays, and 37 listening to the radio at daytime, while 34% listened to the radio in the evening from 7 to 10 p.m. 62% of the respondents use internet on a daily basis, which is a good number. So I'll then move to conclusions. So one, the results of this CAP survey show an overall mid to high level of awareness of climate change among Nairobi residents. However, only a small proportion of the respondents acknowledged seriousness and recognized that there were things which they could personally do to reduce climate impacts. Two, most respondents felt that they were not very informed about matters concerning climate change and made a strong call for more information, more public awareness, and a great percentage are ready to learn and receive information regarding climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. Most respondents also agreed that children should be taught about climate change in schools. And lastly, the study revealed that 70% of the respondents have access to internet and internet-enabled mobile phones. However, despite this, they generally do not go out of their way to search for information on climate change. Most use their phones or internet mainly for news and entertainment. So then a good thing, we could pass this information in between the news and in between the entertainment circles. So what were the policy recommendations? We had 4 policy recommendations. So first of all, environmental and climate change education programs should be initiated in conjunction with schools, colleges, and resident associations to educate city population on the science behind climate change, the effects, and both the individual and collective actions of the population that will reduce the effects of climate change. 2, with the evident low incomes levels and harsh living conditions of Nairobi residents, implementers should seek to link climate change issues with emerging issues such as unemployment and poverty as part of its awareness campaign or awareness creation, and work on introduction of green jobs and development of the economy through green jobs. Third recommendation is that it would be important to create special programs for schools, that's primary, secondary, as well as universities and colleges. Outreach and where possible, lobby for climate change topics to be introduced to school forums, as well as outdoor activities. And lastly, 19% of the population believe that persons engaging in climate change work are making a big deal out of nothing. 13% also believe that climate change is not affecting us as a country. So 17% believe that we are too small to do anything about climate change. There should be special targeted messages for these groups of people. So on media, the recommendations were due to popularity with TV, radio, and internet as the main sources of information. The media outlets need to broadcast relevant, accurate information on climate change, as well as come up with educational programs and shows to educate the public and raise awareness on climate change. Still on media, journalists should be well trained on climate change reporting to enhance accurate and clear reporting on the matter. And lastly, trusted personalities should be used to pass messages of climate change and environmental conservation. So that brings us to the end of part one of my presentation. We then now move to part two, where we ask the big question: how can collaborative efforts between research institutions, academia, policymakers, and the local community amplify the effectiveness of education and awareness campaigns that will shape knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions regarding climate change in Africa? So we already have an idea of what people think about climate change. And yes, this is just about Nairobi. Maybe if it is done somewhere else, it would be different, but at least that helps us. And we know that there should be collaboration. We all know that climate poses poses a major challenge for research institutions, academia, local community, policymakers, and governments. So there needs to be a broad public support for effective response. From the study, we've realized that raising public awareness and shaping knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions regarding climate change is crucial. So one, I think we need to understand and help the public understand the perceptions, and also we need to understand the public perceptions of climate change. And this, we should know that one, achieving net zero emissions globally will require a variety of policy interventions. So it is not a one way of doing it. It requires several varieties of policy interventions. So from a public acceptability perspective, public perceptions can always hinder the adoption of otherwise desirable climate mitigation policies. We've also noted that tackling climate change requires ensuring that climate actions receive a broad public support, because this is something that needs to be done by each and every one of us. So understanding public perceptions is the first step in this direction. And that is why we were carrying out this survey. So once we have done that, the next thing would be now raising climate change policy awareness. So knowledge about climate mitigation policies remain far from universal, and many people still have no opinion when it comes to supporting or opposing policy actions in their country, in their county or country or continent at large. Many people are just there. Yeah, it's not, they don't know whether it is right to say this climate change is a problem or it is not. No, they just look at their immediate needs. So in order to support climate transitions, there's an urgent need to close the still large information gap and raise awareness of the societal transformations and behavior changes needed. As we are aware, the cost of inaction and the impact of climate policies, the cost of inaction will be great. Now, most of the things that we do are as a result of behavior. There are things that we have lived doing and we normally do them. So if we are to change behavior, we should know that it is a process. Behavior change is a process. It's not something that you start today and within a month you're done, or within 2 months you're done, or a year. It is a long-term thing and needs to be done continuously. So from our study, we've realized that we need to secure multilateral support for climate action. So there is widespread support for international cooperation, and this should also be done towards climate change or towards climate action. So the public is likely to be more supportive of adopting costly climate policies if other countries do so. And that's why we are asking the big question: how can we collaboratively do this? It's, climate change is a transboundary issue. Even in Kenya alone, we cannot say that one country will do this and it is okay. It's something that needs to be done collaboratively, across borders, across nations, across continents. It's a global issue and needs a global fight. So securing cooperation among a small number of the largest emitters could catalyze the need for climate action and pave way for others to follow suit. So what can we also do about community engagement? So we should carry out community engagement through effective communication. So we should communicate information to the public about how policies work and their effectiveness of the effectiveness in reducing the emissions. Now, research indicates that the public is sensitive to the potential negative implications of climate change. However, we also find out that communication benefits can help build support. So there needs to be an engagement of communities through a very comprehensive communication strategy that integrates multiple communication channels, such as social media, mass media, education, and training, as well as partnerships and collaborations, can play a significant role in shaping knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions regarding climate change in Africa. It is also important to ensure that communication content is accurate, that the information that we are giving is informative, and it is engaging, and it is accessible to a wide range of target communities. We should also look at community education and training, where education and training programs in communities that are tailored to specific needs and contents to the target audience play a significant role in shaping knowledge, attitudes and perceptions regarding climate change in Africa. So by providing education and training that is relevant and accessible to community members, they will be better equipped and adapt to fight and also adapt to the impacts of climate change. There should be partnerships and collaborations. So partnerships and collaborations with relevant stakeholders are crucial. in shaping knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions, and are also important in reaching out the different groups of people, the different groups of communities, different sets, different age sets of people. There should also be working, organizations should also work with government agencies, NGOs, private sector, and resources can be mobilized. And best practice can be shared, and a united front can be created towards or for climate action. Public institutions should also come in together and familiarizing public institutions with the effects of climate change and the impacts, and also helping them understand and and help them communicate and popularize practical adaptation measures by making consistent efforts to improve understanding about climate change is important. But this will also help in shaping knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions regarding climate change. Lastly, there should be follow-up activities. We are already coming together, organizations are partnering, and we're offering knowledge activities, capacity buildings. Then there should now be follow-up activities just to find out, are we making any steps? So there should be promotion of systematic activities for raising awareness and confidence among vulnerable groups and finding out their ability to adapt to climate change. Collectively through well-organized mutual help. We should also identify the areas and population groups that need the most help. Just knowing this is the group that we should really focus on, I think would help. Like we already singled out the climate deniers. How do we get them? How do we communicate with them? How do we talk to them? We should also demonstrate the impact and cost of climate change on health and livelihoods through compiling case studies to share practical experiences, and also practical experiences such as the links between storms, flooding, drought, heat, air pollutants, food shortage, the normal things that the population sees. How do we connect and let them know that part of these normal things, part of these things that you are seeing are actually caused by the effects of climate change? Then we should also disseminate and provide access to good quality information about the causes and the impacts of climate change and adaptation options that we have. We should also teach and also showcase the threats that climate change poses and help close the gap between climate adaptation plans and poverty reduction strategies. Lastly, on the follow-up activities, we need to improve the scientific knowledge of highly educated people through training, workshop, regular television and radio broadcasting, and also through social networking sites, social media. We should also empower subnational authorities and institutions to lead the development of strategic directions and guidelines for climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. We could also link commonly experienced weather with simple climate change science. Like the recent, like now the way the recent rains and floodings that have happened in December and parts of January. Yeah, we could explain what causes this to the communities so that they understand what is actually happening. We should also decode climate change language so that non-specialists and low-educated audiences can understand the climate change effects. We should also provide climate change information, especially on adaptation practices to communities, and also have information centers where individuals can get information. And lastly, we should support collaboration among institutions so that they work together to achieve effective and inclusive dissemination of climate change information. That brings me to the end of the presentation. So I would now take questions and comments. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lavender.
Thank you so much, Jim, for that wonderful presentation. That was very insightful. What just came to my mind is like, however much people, the actors from different sector, talk about climate change in different conferences, in various scopes, still there's a percentage of people who are out there who are still not aware of this thing, their effects, and some still believe like climate change still doesn't affect us up to today. So I think that's an eye opener to us as researchers, like what we really need to work, like still a lot needs to be done, especially on creating awareness and information dissemination. Probably I will just, I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but I will just pose it this way. There's a project we're dealing with where we're looking at the climate services and information. We've realized like most organizations who are working with the locals, there's a way this information is disseminated to them, but it's not clear. It's not, it's accurate here, but it's not making sense to them. So what needs to be done? I don't know if it's language barrier causing that problem. Yeah, so I don't know if you got my question. Again, I will just open this door to anyone who has a question, just to raise your hand, or rather you can just unmute, and or you can also put it in the comment section. I'll read it for you. Thank you. Like, kindly just brief us on climate information to these local people. How should it be looked into?
Okay, thank you very much, Lavender, for that question. So one thing that we need to look at, and it's something that I think I mentioned in the presentation, is about decoding climate change language so that non-specialists can understand. We need to come up with simple language so that people can understand. The people who also we use to send out this information should understand it and also make it simple for them to understand. I was working on a project with CARA. CARA is Kenya Alliance of Resident Associations. I think if you go to their website, we did a handbook for climate change, and we were trying to just make a simple handbook that has the definitions and also just pass information about climate change in the most simple way. Now, this is in English. So I think it can still be made even simpler as we continue talking to communities. So mainly it's about just simplifying the language and also putting it in the context that the community understands. So that would be a good strategy to ensure that communication happens and these people learn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charles, kindly. Charles, we can't hear you.
I think his computer has hung something.
Not yet.
He seems to be having, I think, technical issues or internet issues. We'll give him a minute.
Okay, as Charles work on his computer, there's a question from Vincent Ojuka. So he's asking, how has CBC curriculum enhanced access to information on climate change, and have these influenced people's perception, knowledge, and attitude?
Do I go straight into that, or can I like have 3 questions, then answer all of them? Is there any other
Probably
question
just
on
go
top
through it. I haven't seen any.
Okay. So one, I'd say CBC has incorporated climate education or environment education. I see they teach environmental studies, which is a good start. And I know that this will be a positive effect because it will improve knowledge, attitudes, and perceptions. So though this might not be realized immediately because it's a long-term thing, but it's a good start. So I believe in the next few years, then we should be able to see the effects of including environmental education into the curriculum. So that's a very good move, and we are happy about it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Probably I just also realized while doing your study, the lowest percentage were the people below 20 years old, and I think the children should also be incorporated in this. Okay, Dr. Teller, please.
Thanks, thanks, Lavenda. And thanks, Yamar, for a very good presentation. The area of climate information system is becoming very critical. Even from COP28, where there was agreement and calls to raise ambitions that could then enhance resilience at the very ground level where impacts are felt most. And of course, a number of commitments were made to that effect. There are quite a number of donors and stakeholders who are really passionate around trying to push that agenda. But the big question that remains, and perhaps is something that maybe you could clarify to us, Jamar, is how do we conceptualize a climate information system? What does it entail if you're researching a climate information system? How do you conceptualize it? And number two, for quite a long time, the perception around climate information system or communicating climate change information has been biased, biased in the sense that it's always been about experts taking the information to the people, which there's no problem with that. That's very great. But in terms of thinking about it in the context of polycentricity in governing climate information system, where there's need for flow of information from both sides. What are some of the barriers that you see? And if you're talking about perception, why is it that people just perceive that climate information systems should be just, or communicating climate information should just be about, taking the information to the people, to the farmers, to the, yet again, I think there's quite a lot that us as experts, policymakers, and different stakeholders can really learn around what is happening on the ground to be able to inform some of the needs. Because sometimes I think there's even misalignment in terms of the type of information that is passed from one information holder to the other, or the information that is passed to the communities or the local people. Maybe they may not, it might not be a relevant information that they need. And perhaps thinking around the polycentricity, where we also have bottom-up systems of climate information, informing the process so that there is kind of alignment and relevance in that sense. But I want to hear your thought around that kind of perception, why people think that information should just flow from experts to the local people, and what is the implication of that in terms of progress with climate information systems.
Thank you very much, Dr. Teller. Very insightful questions. So on the first part of the question where you just want to find out how do we conceptualize climate information systems. Now, in communicating on climate change has over time been, I would say, put in a way that it comes from the top to the bottom. But again, if you look at the old communities and the indigenous communities, you find out that they were aware about these things that were happening, about information that was happening in, due to climate change, or information that just were happening on the weather changes and things like this. But then things changed where I would say that maybe their opinion or their teachings were in a way sort of disregarded, and it mostly started becoming more scientific, and this information coming from the academia and from the learned people. So what I would say and what my thoughts are is that, one, the information that is being, the system itself is quite haphazard. It is not systematic, and there is a problem in terms of trying to make it systematic because of the different kind of players within the system. So you find that there are different organizations doing different things, and there is government here. So I think that the first approach in order to streamline the system would be to just map out and have a clear direction and a clear sense of how things could happen. The different organizations that are doing different things are doing it in good faith, but it's just that now there is a lot of haphazardness, and there is no streamlined system or way of actually passing this information. In the event of carrying out this information sharing and public participations and all that, then we also find out that there are informations that are not passed out well. There are individuals or groups of people that are not passing out accurate information. So there's a lot of also what I would call mishaps in passing out this information. So again, this should be streamlined to ensure that whatever gets to the people or whatever gets to the people on the ground is actually accurate, it is actually well decoded and can be understood. Two, I think I've also talked about now taking this information down to the people. The problem that now we are facing now is that now it's not streamlined. So those are the things that we need to work on. There needs to be a way to streamline.
What do you mean by what do you mean by streamlining in this case, like in actual practical sense?
Or in simple terms, streamlining is you will find a CBO, for example, in my village, carrying out an issues of climate change. But if you actually look at what they are doing and what they are teaching the people, it's I would say it might not be scientific. They're just doing it in their own way. Then you will also find that the ministry probably is doing something also within that particular area. So if you go to an area, for example, you go to my village and you ask them anything or just maybe issues on farming, they will tell you there's this NGO, these people were here and they taught us this, and when you go to the neighbor, then the neighbor tells you something different. So that's what I mean by streamlining, that the way that things are happening are not really streamlined. So there is information gaps, there is a different information going around. So then that again affects the knowledge levels, affects the perception and attitudes of people.
Okay, I think that's well answered. Probably not unless Dr. Taylor, you're not satisfied.
I'm happy. I'm happy. Thank you.
All right, Charles, go ahead kindly.
Thank you so much, Oduor, for that presentation. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks a lot for that presentation. And you brought out some percentage, especially close to less than 25% of the respondents are just aware of, yeah, I think you can go to the findings here. Yeah, 20% of the 20% of the respondents. No, just go to the next slide. In terms of the findings on the awareness, the respondents' awareness about climate change, I think they are close to less than 25%. And my question here is the questions you had asked about their understanding about climate change. Now, I was reflecting on the Kenya, on the Kenya's enactment of policies on related to climate change, and especially the communication strategy. It was being discussed at some point. I don't know if you managed to refer to it. And in your presentation or the questions you're asking the respondents, and I'm building on what Dr. Taylor raised around, were you asking the questions looking at the local communities of the respondents in the city being the recipient of only scientific information, or also looking at it from how are they packaging the climate-related information from the individual community perspective? Because if we get that understanding, then it will be very easy to interrogate the policy options with regards to facilitating communication of climate change. Because the way you have presented so far, it could be the design that you're only looking at how they are perceiving or the understanding the scientific aspects of climate change. But remember also the local communities or the individuals in the different sectors, in different ecosystems are interacting already with the climate change, and they could be presenting or defining them differently. So I think that will raise the question around the concepts. When you are using the concept, were you able to define from scientific and also how the communities or the respondents really defined? And then secondly, in terms of tools, you have brought in, of course, like the TV, radio, the internet. When you look at the context at which communities also, if you look at, for instance, the recent rainfall, that last year, there was prediction by the Kenya Meteorological Department that we are expecting El Nino. At some point, the political class were raising the concern that the likelihood that we might not have El Nino. And now we have had extensive rains. So this one comes also around the political economy or the perception, the political definition, the scientific definition, and also communities define climate change or the weather parameters that shape climate change. So were you able to look at those interplay or the synergies that they bring on board and the differences or points of divergence in terms of when the community, when this individual receive the scientific information, are they able to absorb or give a feedback that can really kind of positioning the definition of the understanding of climate change? And then that one also give us the opportunity to challenge the strategy now or the policies, or now the policies are defining communication package or strategies and guide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Yes, that is very important. Now, when we were carrying out the survey, what we did, it was just a very simple, basic knowledge, attitudes, and perception survey. So we did not go into the scientific definitions. Actually, we did not even tell them the scientific definitions. It was just a random interview. So the questions or the answers that they gave were from their, I would say, from a community definition. It was, so-and-so, I'm carrying out this survey. Once we get the consent, then have you heard about climate change? Yes. Do you understand the effects? So it was not a scientific, we were not getting it from a scientific definition of climate change. It was just from the local basic understanding or the community understanding of climate change. Thank you.
And in terms of the existing strategies on communication at the country level or at the county level, were you able
Yes.
to look at one or two and then say this is actually kind of, there is a gap in this policy document or policy discourse?
No, we did not, at that particular time, we did not look at the policy document. So we just carried out the policy, the CAP survey, but we did not look at the policy document. It was just a simple, basic KAP survey. I remember this was carried out
Then
in
maybe
20...
I'll recommend that you look at the policy, because you have made policy recommendations or linkage to the policy. So then you need to highlight what are those gaps, so that from the study now, it translates, because it's a scientific study, then it becomes a concrete evidence in terms of informing either the review or of the national climate communication strategy, or the development of the sub-national at the county level, and even also at the private sector or at the individual level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That is noted.
Okay, thank you so much for all that insights. I would like to read what Leah wrote in the comment section.
Hi, Lavender. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Is that Lavender? Hello?
Hello,
Yes,
I can
we
hear
can
you.
hear
Please
you.
go ahead.
This is Carol. I just
All
wanted
right.
to, before you read the comment, I wanted to say really thank you for the presentation. I think it really gives us insights into what we need to know about climate change. However, I have just a small comment. I don't know if it's a comment or something to consider. When you're talking about education and awareness, I saw in your policy recommendations that we need to put it, I think, with our education curricula or something. This is something that I've always spoken to. And I see many serious scholars on board. I'm just wondering how best do we put this agenda so that we can be able to include issues of education, particularly in the curricula for issues climate change, because I know, and I've kept saying, and I'll not stop saying, like issues of HIV and AIDS have even been input in the university curricula. I keep wondering when we will have a talking point where we can include issues of climate change, even in the university curricula, if need be. Because if everybody knows, if I know and you know, that spiral effect will have an impact in what we want to talk about, issues of climate change awareness. That is my comment. I don't know if it's a comment. I don't know if it should be addressed, but at least you can tell us something about it. What are your thoughts?
Thank you very much, Carol. So environmental education has already, part of it has been introduced into the CBC curriculum. So I see the kids right now are taught about environmental education, which is a good thing. So I don't know how far it is to be integrated into the higher learning institutions. But I think it would be a great thing to incorporate it into the curriculum of the higher education systems, because it will really give a big boost to the fight against climate change. So I agree with you that this should be effected and this should be got into the curriculum. What I don't know is how long or how far it is. I know there have been discussions about it, but I'm just not too sure how far this has gotten to, or how fast we will get to have it in the curriculum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That will be considered as well. I really want to read what Leah wrote. Leah is asking a question about still on climate information systems. We've talked of the polycentricity of or alignment of these in climate systems. So the question is, how can we reconcile the formal structure of climate information system and with the more informal ones, like the traditional one and the indigenous one? I think with that, it will make it easier to disseminate the information to the community. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Leah, for that question. Yes, it's true. Merging the two would be the best thing to do. It's just that the informal one is, I think it's informal, so there has been difficulty in trying to merge it. But what I would say is that there should be a structured system whereby all the players come in and are able to use, let's say, a particular curriculum or use a particular system. This is why I was saying that there is a lot of haphazard passing of information by different groups of people, by different groups of organization. And that is why we are not able to have something that is structured. So that is one of the essence of this presentation, is that how can we then have something that is more structured to help us then move this information forward. So those are some of the food for thought reasons for this particular presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there's anyone I'm leaving behind in case you have a question or a comment. Okay, so I think we have none, and I would really love to thank you, Jim, for that insightful presentation. So the ball is now on our court as researchers and those who have all the knowledge about climate change and these climate information services. How do we make this transformation from the top, now that the people who already know what needs to be done, to move to the bottom, that's the local community, and how should these be complementary to each other? So, oh, sorry, there's that. Akfan, is it possible just unmute and ask your question? I would really love you speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Your presentation focuses on community actions, perceptions, knowledge. My question is essentially beyond the perceptions and knowledge. And what kind of practical mitigation steps and measures can communities take? Keeping in mind that most of these mitigation measures would have economic implications on their lives and livelihoods. So from your surveys, I don't know whether you're able to ask your respondents what they think they can do, and how feasible are those things in terms of the cost of doing those things and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So what our survey was just a basic survey. So we didn't ask the respondents what they think we can do. But then from our analysis, one, there was low evidence of low income levels. And from that, if you look at our policy recommendations, was that we need to link climate change issues with the emerging issues, such as unemployment, such as poverty, and come up with green jobs that would help develop the economy. So this is something that I would say is on our part in terms of policy making, in terms of just lobbying organizations and parliament and our leaders to help us move towards creation of green jobs, because this will also help towards the fight towards climate change. So we did not get it right from the we did not get it right from the respondents, but if we triangulate the data, then that is a direction that we need to take. How do we increase employment through fighting through the fight against climate? And this is by creation of green jobs. So this is a policy action that I think should take up and lobby and see on how to have it effected. Thank you.
It's okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Time is far much spent. And at this point, I would really love to welcome our Executive Director, Dr. Atela, to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Lavenda, for organizing this and for the able moderation. Thank you, Jim, for presenting a very topical issue. This is a discussion that we need to continue with. Indeed, climate information system remains one of the key topical areas that most stakeholders are going to focus on in the next few years. So you are at the right place, and the research questions you've tried to answer are very fundamental in terms of not just creating the awareness around how what evidence exists with regards to communicating climate information, but also what gaps could be there. You've asked critical questions and you have raised important concerns. So that's important. And I think as a community of researchers and fellows in Africa, the big task we have ahead is how to be able to answer those questions in very strategic and also in very factual and sort of knowledge-driven ways. So that means that there's quite a lot to be done with regards to research in this space, and the evidence needs are quite a lot. I mean, even thinking around your presentation, I already see even a master's or a PhD thesis question around just trying to compare what the information needs or aspirations of communities, of the local communities like farmers who are suffering the impacts of climate change, vis-a-vis the kinds of information that is being shared with them from the different sources, and just to try and compare that match, alignment or misalignment, and try to see where can the mainstreaming that you have actually highlighted be done effectively. And as part of trying to open up these evidence needs, I think is something that as ARIN, we are keen on. And just to mention that towards the end of this year, we will be doing two things, or doing three things. One, we will be having our ARIN Fellows Assembly, hopefully in Uganda at Makerere University, so that we can at least move people a bit out of Nairobi. Nairobi has been a concentration of everything, so we can try to decolonize the engagements from Nairobi. So number two, in that fellowship assembly, we intend to launch what we call the biannual State of Evidence report for Africa. And this is a report that the fellows and the young researchers like yourself, Jim, will be contributing to. So these pertinent questions around climate information system are very important in terms of raising those insights for the evidence status report for Africa, and many other sort of contributions to that set. And number 3, we will be graduating our first cohort of fellows. And graduating, this means that they will actually be very critical in terms of contributing to this report, because you can't graduate by just that is very, you need to contribute something to graduate. Now, it is important that you link into this kind of research, and others that are going to be presented in the next reviews are linked into that kind of system. And just to highlight again, and I think Lavender had talked about this, that we are trying to develop some small grant schemes, which then can help to support some of the early career researchers within the continent to pursue empirical studies on some of the questions that are emerging. So I can already see a lot of research issues that such a grant could support. From your presentation alone, just going to pick a community in rural Kenya, rural Uganda, or wherever, and try to see really what are their perceptions or perspectives around climate information system, and what are the alignments and misalignment. So what I'm trying to say is that the picture is big with this, and I think that is the message we need to take out there, that really there are a lot of complexities, there are a lot of questions that we need to answer for policymakers to make the right decisions, for the donors to put money in the right places, for the decisions at the international level to be cognizant of these disparities in reality. So yeah, this is very critical, and I want to again take the opportunity, Jim, to thank you for raising this, and hopefully we look forward to seeing the publication that is going to come out of this, and engaging with it further. And if you still need more comments, please feel free to share. We can be able to have more discussions around this. And finally, yeah, in terms of building the Fellows Assembly that I've mentioned, we have one of our colleagues that I wanted to introduce here. I don't know whether Dr. King is still here or she has left. Kenya is still there, no? Yeah, I can see Dr. Kenya is there. So Dr. Kenya will be working quite closely with Lavender to drive the Fellows Assembly agenda and the plannings around it, and the programmatic aspects around it. So I just wanted her to say something so that when she may reach out to some of you to put something together in line with that ambition. So yeah, you can be able to know her in advance. Kenya, you can say hi to them.
Hello, everyone. Just like Dr. Atela has said, my name is Irelia Akinyi, and I look forward to our engagements with all the fellows, and also, by God's grace, seeing all of you or meeting all of you in towards the end of the year in Kampala. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, I give it back to Lavender to take some photos, or are they selfies, Lavender? Back to you.
They're both. Okay, I'll request everyone to turn on their video so that we can take a group photo.
And maybe the screen is still being shared. Maybe we stop sharing this.
Just a minute. Meanwhile, you can just practice smiling so that the photos doesn't come out pathetic. Is it okay? Yeah, please turn on your videos kindly. Akinyi, Delali. Okay. So in a count of 1, 2, 3, let's all smile. Okay, that's fine. So thank you so much for taking this session. We catch up next week. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. Yeah, good one.
Bye-bye.